My girlfriend looked me in the eyes and said, "You're a great guy, just not great for me right now." I didn't say anything back. I looked at her. I heard every word. I understood exactly what she meant. I said, "Okay." Then I picked up my keys and walked out. 3 weeks later, she called 7 times in one day. That's where this story actually begins. I was 31. Commercial real estate. Not the glamorous kind. The kind where you read contracts at 11 at night and wake up at 6 to answer emails no one else will. I had built something quiet and stable. Not flashy, just real. Mara and I had been together 2 years and 4 months. I know the exact number because I am the kind of person who notices details other people dismiss. The imbalance was simple. I gave more than I received. Not in a way that made me a victim. In a way that made me comfortable. I told myself she was still finding herself. I told myself patience was a form of strength. I was wrong. Patience without standards is just waiting for someone to take you seriously. She never did. The exact moment it broke was not dramatic. That is the part people never believe. We were at dinner. A Tuesday. She had spent the weekend with her friends in another city. I had not asked too many questions. I had not tracked her location. I had not sent the kind of anxious text that tells someone they have power over you. I had simply continued living. When she came back, something had shifted in her. I could feel it the way you feel weather before it arrives. She said it over pasta she barely touched. "You're a great guy, just not great for me right now." I heard the architecture of that sentence. The right now was doing a lot of work. It was meant to soften the landing. It was meant to leave a door open, not for me, but for her. So she could return if she chose to. So she would carry no guilt. So I would wait. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pressure in my chest. I felt something closer to recognition. Like finally seeing a pattern you had been looking at for months without naming it. I said, "Okay." She waited for more. There was no more. I left a 20 on the table for my half of the bill, stood up, and walked to my car. I did not slam the door. I did not text her when I got home. I did not post anything. I did not call a friend to process it at midnight. I went home, sat in my kitchen, and made a list. Not an emotional list. A practical one. Everything that was mine. Everything that was shared. Everything that existed because I had quietly built it or paid for it or arranged it without ever making it a point of conversation. The list was longer than she knew. We did not live together. That was the first detail she had miscalculated. She assumed we were entangled. We were not. I had never added her to anything. Not my lease. Not my accounts. Not my emergency contact. We shared one thing that mattered. I had been paying for her gym membership. Not because she asked. 8 months ago, she mentioned it was expensive. I said I would handle it. Then I simply did. Automatically. Silently. The way I handled most things. I canceled it that night. Not as punishment. As accounting. The subscription was tied to my credit card. I removed the card. 40 seconds. I canceled the parking pass too. I had been renewing it for her outside my building for over a year. She visited twice a month, sometimes more. I had added her car to the permit list because it was easier. I removed it. Also 40 seconds. Then there was the trip. 6 weeks away. Portugal. I had been planning it for 3 months because she had mentioned once, casually, that she had never been. Both flights on my card. The hotel too. The morning after the dinner, I canceled her ticket. Took a partial credit. Kept everything else. I was carrying that quietly. Every time she texted in those first 2 weeks, I thought about it. I said nothing. There was one more thing to undo. Her brother worked in finance. He had been trying to get into commercial real estate for a year and a half. 2 months before the dinner, Mara had asked if I could connect him with some people I knew. I said yes. I made 2 introductions. One had led to a conversation that was still ongoing. A potential role, not confirmed but warm. The morning after the dinner, I sent a brief message to my contact. Professional. Simple. "Hey, the connection I made last month, I need to withdraw that introduction. Something came up on my end. Nothing about him, just my situation." My contact understood. These things happen. The conversation went cold. I did not tell Mara. I did not tell her brother. I simply stepped back from something I had been holding open. That is the thing about quietly building things for other people. They assume the things will stay built even after you leave the room. For days passed. Nothing from her. I expected nothing. On day 5 she texted. Casual. "Hey, how are you?" I read it. Put the phone down. I was in the middle of something. 2 hours later I replied. "Good. You." She said she was okay. She said she had been thinking. She said she wanted to talk. I said sure. About what? She said, about us. I said, there isn't really an us right now. Your words. Long pause. Then, I didn't mean it like that. I said, how did you mean it? She didn't answer. She asked if we could get coffee. I said I was busy that week. I was not lying. I had a deal closing. I was not going to rearrange my schedule for a conversation she was not ready to have honestly. She asked about the following week. I said maybe. I did not confirm. This is the part people misread. They think silence is a tactic. It was not a tactic. I was simply not available in the way I used to be. The availability had been a choice. I unmade the choice. On day 11, she noticed the gym membership. The text came in at 8:47 in the morning. Hey, my gym is saying my membership is canceled. Did something happen with the card? I replied, I canceled it. Since we're not together, I shouldn't keep paying for things. Makes sense, right? No response for 3 hours. Then, you didn't have to do that. I said, I know. I wanted to. She said, this feels like a punishment. I said, it's not. It's just accurate. That word bothered her. I could tell from the silence that followed. On day 14, her friend Priya messaged me on Instagram. Long, drafted, clearly rehearsed. She said Mara cared about me. That the right now was fear, not truth. I replied, thanks for sharing. Muted the conversation. Some situations don't need a response. They need a closed door. On day 18, she showed up at my building. I know because the front desk called up to tell me. I have a good relationship with the front desk. I say good morning. I remember names. When you remember names, people tell you things. I said I was in a meeting and couldn't come down. I was not in a meeting. I was eating lunch. But the message was honest in what mattered. She waited 20 minutes. Then she left. She texted from the car. I just wanted to see you. I replied, I know. I'm not ready for that yet. Yet was the most I gave her. I did not regret it. I did not build a story around it either. Her brother called on day 22. I answered because he had always been direct with me. He said he didn't know what happened. He said she wasn't doing well. He said he thought she made a mistake. I said, I appreciate that. He paused. Then, the connection you made for me. It went quiet. I said, timing on my end. Nothing to do with you. He said okay. He didn't push. I respected that. I closed the call and went back to work. Then came day 28. She found out about Portugal. Not from me. From a client of mine who had liked a photo I posted. A tile wall in Alfama, late afternoon light, nobody in the frame. Mara followed him. She saw it. She texted, you went without me. I replied, I went. She said, that was supposed to be our trip. I said, it was a trip I planned. I took it. The silence after that was different from the other silences. It was heavier, not with anger, with understanding. The specific silence of someone realizing that the door they left open was no longer there. She sent one more message that night. I think I made a mistake. I read it, sat with it, put the phone face down on the nightstand in a hotel room in a city she had always wanted to see. I did not reply that night. The next morning I replied, I think you probably did, but I'm not sure it matters now. She said, how can it not matter? I said, because I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago. Not in a dramatic way. Just, I made adjustments. I adjusted to you not being here. I'm not going to unadjust. She said, I don't understand. I said, I know. That was true. She did not understand. Not because she was unintelligent. Because she had been operating on an assumption so deeply held she had never had to examine it. The assumption was that I would remain available. That my patience was structural, not conditional. That I was the kind of man who would absorb her uncertainty and wait on the other side of it, unchanged. She had misjudged the leverage. That was all. When I came home from Lisbon, I did not contact her. She called twice in the first week. I answered once. We spoke for 12 minutes. She said she had been scared of how much she needed me, and that fear had made her push me away. I believed her. I understood it. I had compassion for it. I also recognized that compassion and reconciliation are different things. I told her I needed more time. I was not stalling. I genuinely needed to understand what I wanted. Not what was available, not what was comfortable, but what I actually wanted my life to look like. What I found, in those weeks of quiet, was this. I had been building my life in a direction shaped partly by her imagined presence in it. The apartment I had been considering, I was mentally sizing it for two. The savings pattern I was maintaining, I had been thinking about shared futures. The social invitations I had been declining, I had been managing my availability for someone who was not managing hers for me. I began unshaping things. Not dramatically, one decision at a time. I took the apartment. 2 bedrooms, one for an office, not for a guest. I signed the lease in November. I started saying yes to things. Dinners, work travel, a conference in Singapore I had been putting off for months. I went. I met people. I remembered that my life, before I had quietly organized it around another person's comfort, had been genuinely interesting. The last message from Mara came in February, for months after the dinner. It was long, honest, I think. She talked about her patterns. She talked about therapy, about understanding things she hadn't before. She did not ask me to come back. She said she wanted me to know she was sorry. She said she hoped I was well. I read it carefully. It was a good message. It deserved a real reply. I wrote, "I'm really glad you're doing this work. I mean that. I'm well. I hope you are too." That was the end of the conversation. Not because I was cold, because it was complete. Some endings don't need more than what they are. What I missed was not Mara. I want to be precise about this because the instinct is to say you missed the person. What I missed was the specific version of myself that existed inside that relationship. The version that had someone to call at the end of the day. The version that made plans in pairs. The version that felt his choices reflected on another person and so chose slightly more carefully, slightly more deliberately, slightly more with the future in mind. I missed that version. I grieved it in the way you grieve something real. And then I let it become the past. The gym membership was $47 a month. 8 months. $376 total. I don't mention this as a grievance. I mention it as evidence of something larger. We make hundreds of small choices that collectively build a structure. The structure feels mutual because you built it side by side. But sometimes you were building it alone, and the other person was simply standing inside it, warm, never wondering why. When you dismantle it, they feel the cold immediately. You are already used to the cold. You built the walls. You always knew what was behind them. Here is what I know about power in relationships. Not the aggressive kind, not the manipulative kind, but the quiet structural kind that most people never examine until it disappears. Power is not who speaks louder. Power is who can remain unchanged in the face of the other person's reaction. Power is who has built their life with enough integrity that removing one person from it does not collapse the structure. Power is who made the small investments, the connections, the arrangements, the access, without ever announcing them, which means they can unmake them just as quietly. Mara thought she was setting me free with a sentence designed to keep her options open. She thought the right now would hold me in a kind of suspended patience. She thought my calm reaction meant I had absorbed the blow and was waiting to recover. She did not know that calm and passive are different words. She did not know that when I walked to my car that Tuesday night, I was not falling apart. I was calculating. Not coldly, not cruelly, just accurately. There is a version of this story where I am the villain. The gym membership is petty. The withdrawn introduction is vindictive. The solo trip is performance. I understand that version completely. I would ask anyone who holds it one question. If a business partner told you the partnership wasn't working right now, would you continue making investments in their projects? Would you keep the overhead running? Would you hold the door open at a cost to yourself and call it kindness? We do not demand that people absorb costs in professional endings. We only demand it in personal ones, usually from the people who were already absorbing more than their share. I am not saying I was right. I am saying I was accurate. There is a difference. Most people never learn it. Some will read this and say he was cold. He calculated instead of feeling. He never gave her a real chance to explain. Maybe if I had sat across from her the next morning and said, "Help me understand," something would have unlocked. Maybe the fear she described in that February message would have surfaced earlier and I would have had real information to work with. Maybe. But here is the question I keep returning to, the one that has no clean answer. How much understanding are you obligated to offer someone who handed you clarity at a dinner table on a Tuesday night? She had 2 years and 4 months to understand herself. She had access to me, my patterns, my patience, my way of showing up, for all of it. The information was available. She used it to feel safe enough to let go, not to hold on. At what point does a man's willingness to understand become a woman's permission to stay unclear? I don't ask this with bitterness. I ask it because I see people absorbing ambiguity for years, waiting, adjusting, shrinking, told that patience is love and love requires patience, watching that patience get interpreted not as devotion, but as availability, as something to manage, as a resource, not a gift. I was patient for 2 years and 4 months. When my patience ended, people called it cold. Something is wrong with that accounting. The morning I signed my new lease, I stood in an empty apartment with afternoon light coming through windows I had chosen because they faced west. I had wanted west-facing windows for years. Small thing. I had always compromised because someone else preferred morning light. I stood there alone and felt something I want to name carefully, because it was not triumph, it was not relief, and it was not exactly peace. It was alignment. The feeling of your actual life, finally, matching the life you had been quietly building toward. The feeling that the gap between who you are and how you are living is closed. Not because something was added, but because something false was finally removed. I made coffee in an empty kitchen. I had nowhere to be for 2 hours. I sat on the floor, no furniture yet, and I drank it slowly in the west-facing light. If you are the kind of person who gives more than you receive, who builds quietly and absorbs without complaint, who mistakes patience for virtue and tolerance for love, hear me. The moment someone hands you a clean ending, take it cleanly. Not in anger, not in strategy, in respect for yourself, in honesty about what the ending actually means. You are not obligated to remain available to someone who has decided you are optional. You are not cold for believing the words people say to you at face value. And you are not wrong for discovering, in the quiet after, that you had been building something real all along, and that it fits you better alone than it ever fit the two of you together. The last thing she said to me, before everything, was, "You're a great guy. Just not great for me right now." She was right. I was not great for her right now. Because right now, for the first time in 2 years and 4 months, I was finally great for me. But here is the question I leave with you. The one that woke me up at 3 in the morning more than once in those months of quiet. If someone shows you exactly who they are in the moment they feel safest, not their worst moment, not a moment of crisis, but a calm Tuesday dinner when everything is fine and they have nothing to fear, is the most loving thing to understand them or to believe them? Because those are not the same answer. And which one you choose says everything about you. Not about them, about you.